My name is Claire Bennett, and I am 36 years old. The first sound I heard after my daughter opened her birthday gift was not laughter. It was a chair scraping across the floor as she staggered backward, one hand pressed to her throat. The box slipped from her lap. A sweet, overpowering scent filled the room, and seconds later, her knees gave out. My husband caught her before her head hit the floor, shouting for someone to call 911 while I stared at the open package and realized the person who brought it was watching far too calmly. 3 hours later, I was sitting outside a hospital room when my husband returned with 3 police officers and an attorney. My mother stood and whispered, "You are taking this too far." He placed the emergency report and several photographs on the table. "No," he said, "you are the one who went too far." She tried to laugh, but her face changed when an officer lifted a sealed evidence bag. What they found inside the gift was disturbing. What they found on my mother's phone was worse. It proved this had not been an innocent mistake, and that she had expected my daughter to react. I had spent years making excuses for her because she was family. That night, I understood that blood could not make someone safe. Before I tell you why my mother wanted that gift opened before the cake, and how one hidden recording destroyed every excuse she gave, tell me what time it is where you are, and where you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. But to understand what happened, I have to take you back 8 months, to the first warning I should never have ignored. 8 months before Sadie's birthday, my mother, Lorraine Hale, sent me a video claiming children with asthma became weaker when parents protected them from every trigger. The woman in the video stood beside essential oil bottles and recommended controlled exposure to train the lungs. I deleted it. By then, Lorraine had sent dozens of similar posts. Sadie had suffered from severe asthma since she was 6. Pollen, smoke, scented candles, perfume, and concentrated oils could tighten her airways within minutes. She was not fragile. She swam twice a week, joined her school nature club, and hiked with us whenever the pollen count was safe. We simply followed the treatment plan created by Dr. Elena Ruiz, her pediatric lung specialist. Lorraine saw every precaution as proof that I was raising Sadie to fear the world. "You cannot keep that girl in a bubble forever," she told me during dinner. "Her lungs need practice." My husband, Mason, answered before I could. "Her lungs need medicine, Lorraine, not practice." Lorraine had owned a beauty shop for nearly 20 years before retiring and starting an online wellness group. She sold oils, creams, and homemade blends. Her confidence attracted people, but over time, it became dangerous. She stopped offering suggestions and started treating disagreement as ignorance. The worst incident happened when we visited her home in Erie. A diffuser was running behind a plant, filling the room with a heavy lavender scent. Within 2 minutes, Sadie began coughing. Her shoulders tightened, and she reached for her inhaler. Mason rushed her outside while I turned off the diffuser. Lorraine followed me, looking irritated instead of frightened. "It was only lavender," she said. "Lavender is calming." "Not for Sadie, you know that." She claimed she had forgotten we were coming, then added, "She recovered quickly. Maybe that proves I am right." That night, Mason and I agreed Lorraine would never be alone with Sadie again. I sent her a written list of boundaries: no diffusers, candles, perfume, oils, herbal treatments, or supplements. Every visit had to be supervised. Lorraine replied, "I read your rules. I just don't agree with them." I saved the message. 2 days later, she threatened to speak to a lawyer about grandparents' rights. That was how Mason and I met Naomi Park, a family attorney in Boulder. Naomi told us to save every message, record every incident, and make each boundary clear enough that Lorraine could never claim confusion. For several months, Lorraine behaved during supervised visits. She brought Sadie books, played games, and avoided scented products. Sadie loved hearing stories about my childhood, and I wanted to believe my mother had finally understood. Mason hoped the same. Looking back, Lorraine was not respecting our boundaries. She was studying them. A few weeks before the birthday, she asked whether she could bring one special gift. I said yes, as long as it contained no scent, oil, food, supplement, or wellness treatment. She replied, "It is only jewelry. You inspect everything like I am a criminal." I told her I would still check it before Sadie used it. Lorraine responded with a heart emoji. You may wonder why I invited her at all. I have asked myself that many times. Toxic relatives rarely behave terribly every minute. They give you just enough kindness to make you question your fear. They remind you of holidays, memories, and the child who still wants her grandmother nearby. I thought supervision gave us control. Lorraine treated it as a challenge. I believed I had closed every path she could use to endanger my daughter. I did not know she had already designed a gift around the one moment when everyone would be watching Sadie instead of watching her. Sadie's 11th birthday was held at our home in Longmont on a Saturday afternoon. Because scented candles could bother her, we used battery lights on the cake. Her friends from school and swim practice were expected at 2. Mason checked the food labels, placed the rescue inhaler nearby, and reminded the adults helping us where the asthma action plan was kept. Lorraine arrived 40 minutes early carrying a large silver box with a white ribbon. The first thing I noticed was that she had not worn perfume. The second was her phone. She placed it on a shelf facing the living room. "What are you doing?" I asked, recording my granddaughter opening her gift. I stepped closer to the package. There was no smell. I pressed along the sides but felt only a hard, inner box. "You said it was jewelry." "It is." "No oils or scented inserts?" Lorraine sighed. "Claire, it is a bracelet. I followed your rules." Sadie entered wearing the blue sweater she had chosen for the party. Her face lit up when she saw the box. Lorraine's irritation disappeared instantly. "Grandma found something made especially for you." I told Sadie she could open it after her friends arrived. Lorraine objected. "It needs to be opened before the cake." "Why?" Mason asked. "There is a birthday blessing inside. She should wear it during the celebration." Mason crossed his arms. "Let Claire inspect it." Lorraine laughed. "It is a bracelet, not a bomb." Sadie looked between us, and I hated that her birthday had become another test of loyalty. Lorraine knew I avoided scenes in front of my daughter. She had used that weakness against me since childhood. "I want to open it," Sadie said. I knelt beside her. "You can, but you do not put anything on until Dad or I checks it." She nodded. Lorraine adjusted her phone. Our neighbor Melissa had also arrived early to help and began recording from the doorway. That second video later became critical evidence. Sadie sat on the couch and pulled off the ribbon. Lorraine was not watching her face. She was watching her phone screen, checking the frame. Sadie removed the paper and found a polished wooden box. A card on top read, "Breathe free." My stomach tightened. I reached for it, but Lorraine picked it up first. "Just a slogan," she said. "It matches the mountain design." "What mountain design?" "On the bracelet. Go ahead, sweetheart, open it." Sadie looked at me. Lorraine had answered every question, and the box had no scent outside. We were close enough to stop anything dangerous. I nodded. Sadie lifted the lid. Inside was a silver bracelet with a blue stone. She smiled. "It is beautiful." For 1 second I felt guilty for suspecting my mother. Then Sadie lifted the bracelet from the velvet cushion. A hidden compartment underneath opened with a soft click. A sharp floral smell filled the room. It was so concentrated that my eyes burned. Sadie had been leaning directly over the box. She coughed once, then again. The bracelet slipped from her hand. "Mom," she whispered. Her voice was thin and frightened. She tried to breathe, but the air seemed trapped in her chest. Lorraine did not move toward her. She reached for her phone. Sadie's hands rose to her throat. Mason grabbed the inhaler and shouted for someone to call 911. I pulled the box away, but it was too late. Sadie's face lost color. Her knees folded, and Mason caught her before she hit the floor. Through the shouting, I heard Lorraine say, "Do not panic. You are making it worse." 19 people eventually gave statements about that room. 2 cameras captured what happened, yet Lorraine would spend months insisting everyone else had exaggerated the danger. Sadie's smile lasted less than 10 seconds. My mother's plan began collapsing almost as quickly. Mason lowered Sadie to the floor and helped her use the rescue inhaler, but she could not draw a full breath. Her chest barely moved. I called 911 and put the phone on speaker while the dispatcher guided us. Melissa opened the door for paramedics, and another parent moved the children outside. I knelt beside Sadie, telling her help was coming. Her eyes were open but unfocused. She tried to speak, then went limp. I screamed her name while Mason checked her breathing with controlled hands and a breaking voice. One moment I was beside my daughter. The next, I was blocking Lorraine from the wooden box. She had grabbed napkins and was wiping the inside. "What are you doing?" I shouted. "Cleaning it before someone else breathes it in. Put it down. Claire, move. This oil is expensive and you are spilling it." I stared at her. "You knew there was oil inside." Sirens approached. I knew there was a small wellness insert. I did not know she would panic. Melissa stepped between us and raised her phone. "I recorded you saying there was no oil." Lorraine glared at her. "Turn that off." "No." Lorraine reached for the box again, but Mason shouted from the floor, "Do not touch anything." The paramedics rushed in, placed an oxygen mask over Sadie's face, checked her oxygen, and began treatment. One asked what triggered the attack. "Concentrated oil hidden in a gift," I said. Lorraine interrupted. "We do not know that. She has anxiety because her mother makes her afraid of everything." The paramedic ignored the argument and asked about Sadie's medical history. Minutes later, my daughter was on a stretcher. Mason rode with her in the ambulance. I wanted to go too, but an officer asked me to remain briefly because the exposure might have been intentional. I hated staying behind, but I knew Lorraine could destroy the evidence if I left. The wooden box remained on the table. Its velvet cushion had been partly removed, revealing a round container and an absorbent pad soaked with oil. One officer photographed everything while another asked the guests to step back. They sealed the box, bracelet, card, container, and napkins in separate evidence bags. "You are treating a birthday gift like a crime scene," Lorraine complained. "A child lost consciousness after opening it," the officer replied. They collected statements and reviewed the videos. One showed Lorraine promising there was no oil. The other showed her trying to wipe the compartment after Sadie collapsed. The officer asked about Lorraine's phone. She claimed the battery had died. I watched her push it deeper into her purse. It was video. Lorraine refused, calling it private family footage. The officer warned her not to delete anything relevant to the investigation. She laughed. "Investigation? I gave my granddaughter a bracelet." I left as soon as the officers allowed me. At the hospital, Mason stood outside the treatment room, his shirt stained where Sadie had coughed against him. He pulled me into his arms. Dr. Ruiz arrived soon afterward. The emergency team said Sadie had suffered a severe asthma attack after concentrated fragrance exposure. Her oxygen had dropped dangerously low, but she responded to treatment and would remain overnight. "Will she recover?" I asked. "We expect her to," Dr. Ruiz said, "but this was a serious emergency." I sat beside Sadie while Mason searched our messages with Lorraine. He found my written warning and her reply. "I read your rules. I just don't agree with them." Then he found another message. Someday you will understand that controlled exposure is the only real cure. He sent both to the officer and Naomi Park. Police photographs showed a receipt hidden under the wooden insert. It listed the bracelet, concentrated lavender blend, and scent pad, all purchased 11 days before the party. The receipt did not prove Lorraine wanted Sadie to collapse, but it proved she had lied. Mason called Naomi, who told us not to contact Lorraine or discuss the evidence online. A detective assigned to cases involving children contacted Mason after reviewing the videos. Lorraine had arrived at the hospital demanding to see Sadie, but security had stopped her and placed her in a consultation room. "Stay with Sadie," Mason told me. "I am going downstairs." I grabbed his hand. "What are you doing?" "Making sure she cannot rewrite this before morning." While I sat beside our child, Mason was not preparing revenge. He was helping create the one thing Lorraine had always avoided, a record she could not control. 3 hours after Sadie opened the gift, a nurse told me she was awake. Her voice was weak, and her first question was whether her grandmother was still in the building. Was safe and that nobody would enter the room without our permission. Sadie squeezed my hand. She said it would make me stronger. My heart stopped. When did she say that? Before my birthday. She called me when you were at work. Lorraine sometimes spoke to Sadie through our home phone while Mason was nearby, but she had never mentioned a gift. "What else did she say?" I asked gently. Sadie looked exhausted. "She said you worried too much. She told me not to tell you because you would ruin the surprise." I did not ask anything more. Dr. Ruiz told me to let her rest and to share the statement with the detective. A few minutes later, Mason returned. Behind him were the 2 patrol officers from our house, Detective Aaron Cole and Naomi Park. The detective asked if I could step into the consultation room across the hall. A hospital social worker stayed with Sadie. Lorraine was sitting at the far end of the table when we entered. Security had taken her visitor badge. Her purse rested on a chair beside an officer. She looked irritated, not ashamed. When she saw the group behind Mason, she leaned toward him and whispered, "You are taking this too far." Mason placed the emergency report on the table. Beside it, he set 3 printed photographs of the hidden compartment, the oil container, and the soaked scent pad. "No," he said, "you are the one who went too far." Lorraine glanced at the papers but refused to touch them. "That report says Sadie had an asthma attack. It does not say I caused it." Detective Cole sat opposite her. "Mrs. Hale, before we continue, I need to confirm whether you are willing to answer questions." Lorraine looked at Naomi. "Is she my lawyer?" "No," Naomi said. "I represent Claire and Mason." Lorraine's expression changed. For the first time, she understood that nobody in the room had come to protect her. The detective explained her rights and told her she could stop the interview at any time. Lorraine said she had nothing to hide. That sentence was the first of many mistakes. Detective Cole began with simple questions. Had she purchased the bracelet? Yes. Had she purchased the oil blend listed on the receipt? Yes, but it was safe. Had Claire told her not to bring scented products around Sadie? Claire had many unreasonable rules. Had she read the written warning? Lorraine paused. "I receive a lot of messages." Mason placed the printed screenshot in front of her. Her own reply was highlighted. "I read your rules. I just don't agree with them." Lorraine stared at it. "That was months ago." "So you did know," the detective said. "I knew Claire was overprotective." He showed her the video of Sadie opening the gift. Lorraine watched herself promise there was no oil inside. Then she watched herself reach for the box with napkins after Sadie collapsed. "Why did you tell them there was no oil?" he asked. "Because there was not loose oil. It was contained in a wellness insert." "Why did you try to wipe it?" "Because everyone was panicking and spilling things." Melissa's video showed the box resting flat. Nothing had spilled until Lorraine pulled out the pad. The detective played it twice. Lorraine shifted in her chair. "You are twisting this." Naomi remained silent. That silence seemed to bother Lorraine more than an accusation would have. She turned to me. "Tell them I love Sadie." "Love does not erase what you did," I said. "I did not hurt her. She is in a hospital bed. Because you taught her to fear every smell." Mason leaned forward. "She lost consciousness because she could not breathe. She recovered." "That does not make it harmless." Detective Cole placed another document on the table. It was a screenshot from Lorraine's private wellness group. One of the officers had received it from a member after news of the emergency spread among party guests. Lorraine had posted the night before the birthday. "Tomorrow, I will. A child's body can overcome a manufactured sensitivity when fear is removed from the equation." She had not named Sadie, but the timing was impossible to ignore. Beneath the post, someone had asked whether the parents agreed. Lorraine replied, "Parents do not always know what is best." My mother stared at the screenshot. "That group is private." "The person who sent it was concerned about a child," Detective Cole said. "What were you planning to prove?" "Oh," Lorraine's voice rose. "I was planning to show that a small controlled exposure would not harm her. Claire has made that child dependent on medication and terrified of natural products. I wanted one video showing everyone that Sadie was fine." The room became completely still. The detective did not interrupt. He let her keep talking. Lorraine pointed at me. "She has spent years making me look reckless. I wanted evidence that I was right." "You hid the oil because you knew the parents would refuse," Detective Cole said. "I hid nothing. It was part of the design." "You told them there was no oil. Because if Claire knew, she would create a reaction before Sadie even opened it. And you told the child not to tell her mother about the surprise?" Lorraine looked at me sharply. She had not known Sadie was awake. "I told her not to ruin her own birthday." That answer confirmed Sadie's statement without anyone needing to reveal it first. Mason's hands tightened at his sides. Naomi finally spoke. Her voice was calm. "From this moment forward, you are not to contact Sadie directly or through another person. We will request a temporary protection order at the earliest available opportunity. Any call, message, gift, school visit, or third-party contact will be documented." Lorraine laughed, but the sound was unsteady. "You cannot keep my granddaughter from me forever." "Tonight is not a custody discussion," Naomi said. "It is a child safety investigation." Lorraine turned back to Mason. "You are letting your wife destroy this family." Mason looked at her for several seconds. "Claire did not hide an asthma trigger in a child's birthday present. You did." "I was helping her." "You were testing your theory on her body." "I am her grandmother." "That gave you more responsibility, not more authority." Detective Cole ended the interview. He stepped into the hall with the officers, then returned and told Lorraine she was being detained, while investigators consulted with the district attorney's office regarding suspected child endangerment and evidence tampering. The words seemed to drain the strength from her body. "You cannot arrest me for a gift." "This is not about the bracelet," he said. "It is about knowingly exposing a child to a documented medical trigger, concealing that exposure, and attempting to interfere with evidence after she lost consciousness." Lorraine looked at me. "Claire, stop this." I thought of Sadie gasping on the floor. I thought of every warning Lorraine had dismissed and every boundary she had treated like an insult. "I cannot stop the consequences of choices you made on purpose." Her anger turned to panic. She begged Mason to explain that she had never intended serious harm. She said an arrest would destroy her reputation, her business, and her standing at church. Not once did she ask whether Sadie was afraid. Not once did she apologize to her. As the officers led her toward the door, Lorraine called me ungrateful. She said I would regret choosing strangers over my own mother. I answered quietly, I am choosing my daughter. She had believed blood would protect her from accountability. Instead, her own words had given the investigators what they needed. Being escorted from the hospital was only the beginning. Lorraine still had no idea that the defense she was preparing would destroy the life she was trying so desperately to protect. Sadie remained in the hospital overnight. Physically, she improved quickly. By morning, she could speak without coughing, and her oxygen level had stabilized. Emotionally, she was different. When a nurse entered wearing floral hand lotion, Sadie gripped the bed rail and asked whether there was oil in the room. When breakfast arrived in a covered container, she refused to open it until Mason checked inside. She cried when she saw the birthday bracelet sealed in a police evidence photograph. Dr. Ruiz told us that fear after a severe breathing emergency was common, especially when the trigger had been deliberately introduced by someone the child trusted. Within a week, Sadie began seeing a therapist who specialized in childhood trauma and medical anxiety. We did not move her to another school. She had already lost enough. Instead, we gave the school a copy of the temporary protection order, removed Lorraine from every contact and pickup list, and updated Sadie's asthma action plan. Her teacher, coach, and school nurse were told that no package, message, or visitor connected to Lorraine could reach her. Naomi filed for the temporary order as promised. At the hearing that followed, the judge reviewed the videos, messages, medical records, and Lorraine's statements to Detective Cole. The order prohibited her from approaching our home, Sadie's school, swim practice, or medical appointments. She could not contact us directly or through relatives. The criminal investigation continued separately. Lorraine was released with strict conditions while the district attorney reviewed the case. She immediately began telling people that I had staged the entire event. She called herself a grandmother persecuted for believing in natural medicine. She claimed the oil concentration had been too small to cause a real medical emergency, and suggested that Sadie had fainted because I had trained her to panic. I did not answer publicly. Naomi warned us that every emotional argument could become a distraction from the evidence. So we stayed quiet. Lorraine could not. 3 days after her release, she posted a 20-minute video in her wellness group. She said she had used a controlled exposure because